Great. So what is iiRDS? Why did we develop this standard, and what's its scope? So if we talk about intelligent information, we said, okay, let's split up our technical documentation into topics. We deliver HTML, and then we just put it out in the world and people can use it. Why should we use a standard? If you think of IoT scenarios in the Internet of Things, or industrial Internet of Things, you soon reach a situation where you have plants, machines that are that have different components from different manufacturers, but you still want to operate that plant and maintain and service that plant with a central application and with the same people. You don't want to go to the Siemens documentation and the Bosch documentation. And one of the main components of iiRDS is a metadata vocabulary. So standard gives us the possibility of enriching our content with metadata that can be used across manufacturers. And to be honest, we probably use the same metadata anyway, or similar metadata, especially when it comes to machinery or the software industry. So you usually talk about lifecycle phases like installation. And if you use a standard vocabulary, the user later on doesn't need to worry about which term they should use when they enter a search or when they query something in their application, installation or assembly, or maybe setup. I don't know how the manufacturer tagged the documentation. So this is where a standard helps. The second one is that a delivery format like iiRDS enables applications that can handle iiRDS to actually process that content and to aggregate it, to use it for applications like portals, and to actually integrate content from different manufacturers in a common repository, for instance, in an industrial cloud. So all these are good reasons for a standard. A more generic or general requirement is that we can, when we look at the users and at industrial applications, we can no longer deal with manuals or PDFs. We need to deliver information more dynamically, because in the industrial Internet of Things, it's not only about delivering the information once. If you look at digital twins, for instance, which is like a digital representation of a machine, with all its services, all its components, this twin gets a lifecycle record. And maybe the service technician has to replace one component within, I don't know, 5 years. Then you will also want the digital twin to reflect and to have the newest version of the documentation for this component. Or maybe there's a new version of a firmware. People expect that the documentation always fits the product. So this doesn't work. Those application scenarios do not work with PDFs and with static documents. You need modular information that can be delivered and also updated and exchanged dynamically. So that is why we do no longer talk about publication, but more about content delivery. So this is like the focus of iiRDS. We want to create a cross-manufacturer standard for delivering smart content. The standard features a common metadata vocabulary that can be used across manufacturers, and also a delivery format. And iiRDS is extensible because we use RDF as metadata language or format. And because iiRDS is maintained in a consortium, we can align the development of iiRDS with other standardization efforts for IoT or the industrial Internet of Things. In Germany, this is also called Industry 4.0. Examples of that are E-Class, which is a product classification. iiRDS also has the goal to provide some generic tools for generating and validating iiRDS. We do have an open toolkit, and we also have a validation tool with which you can check iiRDS packages for correctness. So these are the goals of iiRDS. It's about the delivery of smart content. iiRDS does not require you, it doesn't say anything about how the content is actually authored. So you do not need to write iiRDS, the metadata, in the format that we specify. You use your component content management system, and those iiRDS metadata should be generated automatically by your component content management system or by a plugin for DITA, for example. When you deliver technical documentation as an iiRDS package, it uses the metadata, and the content is delivered separately. And the content can be PDF or HTML or XML. iiRDS does not specify how this content is presented. So, for example, if your content is delivered in both PDF, XML, and HTML, the application that processes iiRDS, on the other hand, like the portal, can decide which of those renditions to use. So there's no prescription in iiRDS how the content is presented. Also, iiRDS does not specify how you actually store your content, how you organize it in your component content management system or in the delivery system. iiRDS is a delivery format, a transport format between authoring and content delivery in a portal, for instance. This is the way that we serve and where we want to offer a standardized exchange and delivery format. The two main components of iiRDS is, as I said, the delivery format, which is a zip container. I will show that to you in a second. And the core component is the vocabulary, the metadata vocabulary, which iiRDS delivers as an ontology in an RDFS schema. I will talk about that later. So this gives you standardized metadata classes, subclasses, and down to the actual labels. So you have a standardized vocabulary to describe your technical documentation content and enrich it with metadata. The vocabulary is extensible because we do have extension points for company-specific metadata. I will also show that to you later on. So these are the two main components. I will not talk about the delivery format, the zip container, too much. I will focus on the metadata vocabulary because that is the main part. But let me show you one slide about the package. If you generate iiRDS from your content management system or with the iiRDS Open Toolkit, for example, you get something that's called abc.iiRDS, and that is a zip container actually. And in the zip container, you have in the root, you have a MIME type file. Then you have a directory called metainf. This is where the metadata is located. So the content is located here in those directories, meaning that the content and the metadata is separated in the delivery. The metadata is all concentrated in the RDF file, and it points to the renditions here of the content. This could be HTML, for instance, but it could also be PDF or XML. So it's like we separate structure and layout from our content in the CCMS, iiRDS separates between content and metadata. Any questions of that before we go into the metadata themselves?
We don't have any questions in the chat yet. Just a quick reminder, you can type your questions in the chat, or if you have a question that's more elaborate, you can just type in that you have a question, and we'll just get to that then at the end of each topic, as Ulrike does now, and you can activate your audio then. if you like. Oh, okay. We do have first question now in the chat box. Ulrike, do you see it?
Yeah, I
It's
see
how do
that.
you automatically create the metadata from the content management system?
I will talk about that, but the short answer is this is actually a two-component way, or you may have semantic elements like topic types that can be automatically with the transformation script like in XSLT. You can see if you find a task topic in DITA, you then in the production add the metadata item for the topic type to your output. And the second is that you have usually in component content management systems, but also in data environments, you have a way of assigning metadata to your content. And you can use taxonomies or variant metadata for this purpose, usually. And your production, which is either provided by your CCMS vendor or by a script, maps those metadata that is contained in your CCMS to the RDF. It's a simple mapping process. Okay, great. So